Lord Adonis, let's start with you first. Look, a no-deal Brexit is now more likely than ever, even according to the International Trade Secretary. But that's no bad thing, is it, realistically?
Well, it's astonishing that Liam Fox has said this, because it's the same Liam Fox who told us 2 years ago that this would be the easiest trade deal in history. He said that because we were aligned at the moment in our trading patterns and laws between Britain and the EU, this would be a very, very simple deal.
He said this should be the easiest trade deal in history, and he's quite right. It should be the easiest trade deal in history.
Well, he's clearly been incapable of negotiating it then, hasn't he? So if he and this present government aren't capable of negotiating the easiest trade deal in history, then what is their purpose?
That's a fair point. What is their purpose, Lord Lawson? I mean, realistically, is this, as Liam Fox says, is this the fault of the EU, the intransigence of the European Commission, or is this down to incompetence of Theresa May's government and the negotiating tactics?
Look, it was always clear. In the so-called no deal, which is no trade deal, of course, there'll be understandings on security and a number of other non-trade matters, including expats and so on, in both the United Kingdom and in the continent of Europe. But it has always been clear that this is what Brexit means. A trade deal has never been on, not that because it would be difficult to negotiate, but because any remotely acceptable trade deal would encourage those in the rest of the European Union, where there's a lot of disaffection with EU membership, to say, well, how about us getting out of the European Union? So they have always been clear that there would not be. It's always been clear that there would not be a trade deal. And getting out of the European Union and going on to the terms in which we trade with the rest of the world, where we do incidentally far more trade than we do with the European Union, was the likely outcome. And there's nothing wrong with that. And all this talk of hard Brexit is just scaremongering by Ramonas.
You're saying there's not, Lord Lawson, you're saying there's nothing to fear. This is a lot of leavers would have been quite happy for this to be on the ballot in the first place, and nothing to worry about?
Absolutely. Cast your mind back to the referendum a couple of years ago. Those of us who were campaigning for leave never once made this conditional on a trade deal. We didn't talk about a trade deal.
Oh, we know there was a lot to talk about a trade deal. There was a lot to talk about. We'll get a good deal.
Not by us. Not at all. That came later. It was a lot of nonsense which came later. I'm not saying that it was nonsense to try. I think you have to go through the motions. But it was always clear that even though it would be in the economic interests of the European Union to conclude a trade deal, it is not in their political interest.
Okay.
And the European Union is a political entity rather than an economic entity. Economics is merely the means towards the end. And indeed, the European Union is not a particularly successful zone economically. The rest of the world, which is outside the European Union, is on the whole doing much better.
Lord Adonis, Lord Lawson is quite right. This is very much a political union now. It's one of the reasons why people did vote by 52 to 48 to leave 2 years ago. But this is it. It is in the interests of the European Union nations, of the individual people of those countries and the companies, that there is a deal, and we can carry on having absolutely tariff-free, easy transition into nice free trading arrangement. That is in the interest. In which case, why isn't the EU happy to give us that, other than as to either A, punish us for Brexiting, daring to leave, or B, or maybe a combination of the two, to avoid the risk, as Lord Lawson says, of other countries choosing to leave and have a life outside the EU as well?
What Nigel Lawson has just said is completely untrue. It's completely untrue to say that most of the leaders of the Leave campaign 2 years ago didn't want us to have a trade deal with the EU. Indeed, Liam Fox himself said he wanted a trade deal. He's the International Trade Secretary. Boris Johnson said we'd be staying in the customs union and the single market. And the Conservative Party manifesto at the election before the referendum, and Lord Lawson's a member of the Conservative Party, said that if we did do Brexit, we'd be staying in the single market. So all of that is completely untrue. Why should we stay in the customs union and single market? For the perfectly obvious reason that nearly half our trade goes to the EU directly, and another 15% goes to countries with which the EU, and therefore we, have trade treaties. Now, when Lord Lawson says that a lot of our trade isn't covered on those terms, which is the same as the rest of the world, that too is completely untrue. There is no country in the world that trades just on World Trade Organization terms. Not one. Every other country has trade agreements of some
Well, doesn't
kind,
that suggest that they will want to therefore have trade deals with us? I mean, that undermines your argument rather than makes it. Lord Adonis.
In that case, why can the Fox not negotiate it?
Well,
if it's in everyone's interest to have it.
But hold on a minute, Lord Adonis, no, come on. You know,
why? Julia,
Lord Adonis,
why can't we negotiate?
Don't keep asking the question, Lord Adonis. You know perfectly well.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Lord Adonis,
it's a big question. Why can it not be negotiated?
Lord Adonis, you have to wait for the answer. The entire reason why is because legally, under the Constitution, we are actually not allowed to be negotiating openly for any trade deals. We can't have trade deals sitting on the table because we're not even allowed to be in negotiations under the Lisbon Treaty.
I'm talking about the trade deal with the EU itself, which is the one that Lord Lawson has just said that we don't need.
Lord Lawson.
Everyone else told us was going to be the easiest trade deal in history.
No, not everyone didn't. The quote from Liam Fox was, "This should be one of the easiest trade deals in history and human history." And the reason why was because if you have two entities, the EU and the UK, and they already have exactly the same regulation, the same rules, then doing a deal would be much easier than two countries that had never traded with each other and didn't already have a deal. Lord Lawson, the reality is, although I would be, as a Leaver, very happy to blame the EU for their intransigence, there's no question at all. They have not at any point conceded a single thing. I'm more angry right now at the Conservative government for its total hopeless stand in the negotiations and making concession after concession without demanding anything back from the EU. The reality is it won't just be the EU that's blamed if we don't get a deal. It will be the Conservative government.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. I think that let's forget Andrew Adonis, who is a nice chap, but he is a fanatic and he just makes things up as he goes along. But I think that it is unfortunate that we have a very weak government led by a prime minister who is simply not up to the job. And that is unfortunate, but that's where we are at the present.
So should the Brexiteers, should they be ousting her over the summer?
No, I think that look, I'm no longer a member of the House of Commons and haven't been for a considerable time. It will be for the Conservative Party, first in the House of Commons and secondly in the country at large, to decide when a change of leadership should be secured. I mean, clearly, given the last election, it would be crazy to go into another election with Theresa May as leader, but there's no hurry. The next election doesn't have to be till 2022, and it'll be up to them, up to the Conservative Party, to choose the leader who they think is most likely to save us from the Corbyn-McDonnell Marxist alternative, which is horrifying.
All right, Lord Lawson, thank you very much indeed. Just give you a final word, Lord Adonis. Lord Lawson said you're a fanatic. You are fanatical about staying in the EU. That is a fair description. When the Prime Minister said a while back, and I don't even think she believes this now, that no deal was better than a bad deal, is there any deal that would be bad enough for you that would be that you would finally say I'd rather leave on no deal terms? Is there anything that the EU, the European Commission, could demand that you'd finally go, no, we won't give in to that?
Well, the more Lord Lawson spoke, the more he made my case. He said that this is a very weak government led by a Prime Minister who's simply not up to the job. Well, I completely agree, and that is why we're in this Brexit mess, and it's why we should get out of it by having a people's vote so that the people can have their say on whatever hopeless deal Theresa May negotiates, as against the tangible and real benefits we have from being in the EU to protect our trade, protect our jobs and protect our income.
Or given that we've already decided the Remain Leave thing, now I'm quite happy to have a referendum on whether we do deal or no deal, but we've already decided it's not Remain.
No, we've never seen the deal. There hasn't been a deal. Theresa May and Liam Fox told us it was the easiest deal in human history to negotiate. We still haven't got it. When we see that deal, the British people should have their say on it, and the way they have their say on it is by the real choice which Parliament and the British people face, which is whatever hopeless deal Theresa May finally negotiates.
Or no deal.
Or no deal. No, the no deal isn't possible. You even heard Lord Lawson say that we wouldn't have no deal because we'd have to have things that covered our security, and as he very pointedly
yes, but
said,
you know
the
what
rights of expats,
what people mean by that. Lord Adonis, we're going to have to leave it there. Lord Adonis, Lord Lawson, thank you very much.